Hello and welcome to the podcast. I am here with my amazing friend, Henry Charles Davidson.
I'm here with my amazing friend, Henry Charles Davidson, too.
Actually, my amazing friend, Jami Christine.
And I'm here with my amazing friend, Rob Davidson.
And we are testing out some new mics, so we decided we are going to megazord the crap out of both of our podcasts, the Transcend and the Tricast Experience.
Technically, it's just it's Transcend.
Transcend.
Yeah.
Transcend.
Power of the word the.
And Henry is our guest today. We'll be interviewing him about his job making all those poffits.
Poffits. I see what you did there.
Yeah, that was typically we don't have dogs in the podcast, but because I'm house sitting for my parents, he's a little baby and he won't let me go, so he's going to be here in and out today. But so Jami, what are we talking about today?
Well, there has been a topic in the forefront of my life, and I guess in a lot of people's lives, whether they know it or not, of toxic masculinity, and a new term a friend of mine either coined or picked up somewhere I have not heard of, called emotional shaming.
Emotional shaming.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we were talking about the toxic masculinity concept.
Okay.
And she said, it's not just masculinity that's become toxic. It's addressing our emotions in general across the board, because even women fall into that problem too, where feeling emotions and having emotions other than anger and is shameful.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to love. And I feel like there's a problem there.
And it makes sense that there's a problem, because both males and females energetically approach problems in completely different ways,
Absolutely.
are approaching their emotions in completely different ways.
Yes.
And when we fault each other for just bringing our emotions to the table, being human beings, we don't get to be our best selves, and we don't empower those in the relationships with us to be their best selves.
Right.
And so that gets tricky really, really fast. So first, emotional shaming.
Yeah.
What about that do we need to understand to kind of create a baseline? What does that look like?
Well, I guess kind of like what I explained a little bit, as far as just it not being okay to express our feelings, to embrace the fact that we can feel a whole spectrum of different emotions, grief and loss, and it seems like there are emotions that are allowed, and people create them within each other, like guilt and shame. Mm-hmm. How many times do parents do that to their children? How many times do partners do that to each other in a relationship that creates toxic relationships? And
so then how do we navigate that? Because, I came up in a household full of anger, mm-hmm. And I have relationships where people express themselves and their emotions with anger.
Yeah, anger is a very popular emotion. That's one that doesn't get shamed, and that one doesn't get hid. That one's okay for some reason.
And I don't understand, because I actually look at anger as an extremely corrosive emotion. But
it serves a purpose.
And so there's this balance mm-hmm. of how do we look at environments in which we are showcasing and nurturing the emotion of the moment in a way that it needs to manifest itself, mm-hmm. while also holding and appreciating the understanding that we are in control of our emotions, and we create our realities that we perceive through our emotions.
Yes.
And that dumping kerosene on your life through anger might not be productive. But again,
it may be productive, because sometimes it is helpful to throw a little kerosene on a fire that just won't get started.
And see, that's where I get careful. I'm like, I don't know.
That's where that balance is important.
It's a weird thing, because it's like, what is positive anger, especially? And I think that's, as we look at toxic femininity, toxic masculinity, understanding like where the right and wrong sides of this line are is really important, because if it is not fruitful, I I don't think we should be like, oh yeah, well it's okay. Well, it's okay, but while you're doing it, you're nuking your relationships. So why is it okay?
I think, well, it kind of goes back to what I've been really delving into lately as far as what positive and negative polarity is. Positive being service to others in that harmonious way that everyone benefits and grows from it. Negative being service to self, where I really don't care about your feelings. I'm gonna do what's right for me. Screw you. And I think positive anger is such a thing, so long as you keep it reined in and in check and in balance, where I have these feelings and they're intense feelings, and it's making me want to get things done and change things, but I am not going to destroy others or bring them down on my way through navigating this anger. And then there's the other anger where it's, I'm going to get revenge and I'm going to get you back and I'm going to bring you down and I'm going to make you feel the way I feel.
Yeah.
So that's my interpretation of the balance.
So it's where we're directing the anger and where is it coming from within us?
Yeah.
Is how we're.
But I feel like toxic masculinity is, it goes hand in hand with that, where men are free to experience and feel that anger, because that's a man. But how dare a man love? How dare a man feel things like passion or compassion or empathy or kindness, gentleness, care, those softer, more yin, feminine emotions.
And doing that in a moment of friction and not whipping into the opposite polarity just because things get tough.
Yes. Or even in any situation where it is a necessary emotion or it is a fitting emotion. We women can cry, but it seems wrong for a man to cry in our culture. And we women are loving and nurturing, but I do notice a shift in this, thank goodness, but there's a culture of men aren't allowed to play with baby dolls. Little boys aren't allowed to play with dolls. I feel like that's an example of toxic masculinity.
Well, because we're creating men that don't want to be fathers. We're creating men that would rather only be soldiers, and soldiers can't parent worth crap. It's because you're in a state of going to war. And if that is your mindset, if that's the culture that we're continuously building, that our job is to go to war against our fellow man, we are not going to get to a point where we can actually acknowledge each other for who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe men and women and people who don't even identify with man or woman, we all have emotions. And recognizing that we all have emotions is so important. And I think men in our culture are taught to suppress most of those emotions. And in my line of work, I've absolutely seen how detrimental it is to suppress emotions. You bottle those things up, you don't navigate them in a healthy way, and there's explosion later, or there's depression, there's loss of sense of self, there's loss of sense of purpose. And what's the point of living then? I see that a lot, where there's explosive anger or there's crippling depression. So I feel like that's another thing where I would really like to dispel this idea that men especially need to suppress all emotions.
Yeah, and there's a difference between looking at what emotions are not helpful for the moment, but then there's also the being at peace with yourself and what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Which it comes down to like a really interesting approach to how we look at emotions. Are we looking at emotions as like in this comfort mode, or are we looking at it in problem solve mode?
Yeah.
And that's something as a masculine person, sometimes I have trouble with. Is that a friend's coming to me and he is hurt and he is emoting and he is like, this is hard, this is hard, this is hard, X, Y, Z, right? This is why things are happening. This is, and it's like your friend, while he's emoting, he's throwing in fallacies and things that are wrong and bringing in negativity to the environment that wasn't natural to that environment until he is bringing it up.
Until he projected it.
This is how the person said that. I'm like, they didn't say that like that at all. Like, that is just not how it happened.
Yeah.
But then I approach to fix their emotional perspective.
Men are the fixers.
Yeah, and that's not helpful, right?
Yeah. Well, it can be with balance.
And that's the fun part, right? So it's like not being able to. So when I approach something wrong, right, and I'm like in problem solving mode because I am living my life as a business person, and that's the mode I am in all the time. I don't like that. Is just that's my paradigm for the world, right? Yeah. It's like I'm going to work when your friend is struggling, that energy is not what they need in that moment.
Right. They need the more yin, feminine approach of empathy and compassion and, hey, I've got your back and I don't need to try to fix this. I'm just going to hold space for you while you feel.
Their momentary flawed perception of a reality does not matter.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like once they've come to collect themselves, then we can look at, right? Hey, maybe we're not approaching this the best way. Let's figure out how to pull out the friction that we can control before we even look at externals.
Yes.
Right? But you have to have that nurturing, that feminine approach first. Otherwise it falls on deaf ears and you just create more associated friction between you and the other person.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of this comes down to being aware of your feelings and being in control of your feelings. I'm thinking of our conversation earlier today about a sadness of the end of something and moving into the excitement of the beginning of something. But of course, for something to begin, something else must have ended first. And there is a sense of loss and sadness and grief that comes with an end. And I feel like it's necessary to go ahead and grieve that. Go ahead and feel it. Allow yourself to feel it. It's dangerous to get caught up in it, and I think a lot of people who aren't in control of their emotions or aware of their emotions enough will get caught up in that sadness and grief and get all locked into it to where it prevents them from moving forward into the new beginning. Or they do move forward into the new beginning and don't have the capacity to fully enjoy that new beginning and embrace it because there's still all that grief and sadness of the end hanging on that they haven't fully addressed, allowed themselves to feel, and move on from in a healthy way.
And those bottled up emotions, it becomes a point where it corrupts everything it touches.
Yes.
Right? You can't have any relationships because the relationship you're having with so-and-so is just oozing into everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be aware and in touch with your emotions. I think that's a good way to put it. Toxic masculinity is partially being out of touch with your emotions because you were brought up. I feel like these are generational patterns established in our culture. Our society has brought men up to not even be in touch with their emotions because men don't have emotions, don't feel anything, or at least that's what I've witnessed.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating because you absolutely do. And
actually, what's so interesting that it comes down to an incapability to feel safe with those emotions. So what those men are feeling is actually a massive amount of insecurity. And that's because they've been grown up in a community, in a culture that does not make them feel safe to weep, right, when their mother dies, right? Or to, hold shame and then through that have humility and then have making it up to somebody because you messed up versus denying that you messed up to begin with.
That's so good. This is why it's good for me to have this conversation with a masculine because from my perspective as a feminine, I'm seeing this happening, but I'm not in it to know it and to understand it on a better level to where I can help it. Because I have 2 future young men that I'm raising right now who are boys, and I'll be damned if they grow up participating in this masculine culture that we've created.
Something tells me your boys are going to be just fine.
I like to think so, but peer pressure is a real thing too. And as they emerge into the world and witness what other men, what a man looks like.
They're not growing up in a silo.
They're not.
It's like, but how do we then empower our young men to then approach a reality in which they can feel safe and secure in their emotions?
That is a good question. One of the things that really propelled this topic for me, it really got it into the forefront of my mind, was I recently delivered a speech to the senior class the class of senior girls at Redbud High School. We did an event called Coffee and Conversations, and my speech was basically all about empowering these young women to find their own way. You know, we've got this issue of this checklist that society's established for us of, you know, you have to, after high school, you have to go to school to further your education to find your career, and you probably have a steady boyfriend during that time, so now you have to marry him, and then you have to have babies with him, and you have to have the house and the car and the vacations once a year, and then you live happily ever after until you retire to Florida and die.
So and this is a big conversation that like really got me excited to talk about this, is because how terrible that is for the feminine entering that.
Yeah.
It's miserable for the male, because there is, oh my gosh, the psych work here is that when that is the case, we boil down a man's value to only that which he provides.
Yes.
All of these things that are external
yes.
of themselves. You are not your job. You're not.
So not.
You're not your house. You're not your white picket fence. That is not you. And honestly, if you think that's you, that's really friggin' depressing.
That's just sad,
it's
you guys.
Really, because here's the thing, you is something that no one else can replace. There are a lot of people in the world that can have a white picket fence and have 2.5 kids and a dog and, you know, and a great job, right? There's a lot of great jobs out there. Mm-hmm. But where we get our value is from who we are and the divine that we're connected to for every single moment of our day.
Yeah.
We should not be looking to the physical world to create our own value equation. Yeah. Because that means no matter what happens, that's out of our control. You lose your job, you lose value as a person. If you and your value has nothing to do with your job, then no matter what happens to your job, you still have that self-perspective.
You didn't lose anything.
You didn't lose anything.
Yeah. And that was really brought to the forefront for me. But in my case, I was delivering this speech to young women.
Yeah.
And I, as a woman, see the perspective of how disempowering this is to us, to go seek a man who's a great provider and a great father figure and somebody who's going to be a great security blanket. I mean, that's what I married. Yeah. And that was part of my speech too. You know, I married that man and he is a good man, but I was leaving out the whole concept of the fact that he's not the man for me. He's not fulfilling me on those deeper levels. Okay, great. He can afford to take us on a nice vacation. He can afford to keep us safe in a nice house. He can afford the things, but how is that fulfilling me as the deeper soul that I am? My human is taken care of, but my soul never was. And I can see how women look to that in a man and how disempowering that is to a woman. But the big turning point for me, I'm in an author coaching program right now, and my coach is a man. And I was, we were talking about this speech coming up, and he was giving me some speech advice, and that part of the speech I shared with him, and this look on his face, he was like, what more could a woman want in a man? And I was like, whoa, I've never looked at this scenario through a man's eyes. God. I see how disempowering this is to women because I am a woman, but that look on his face was like, this is so disempowering to men. And I looked at it from a completely different perspective after that, because I have 2 little boys who are going to grow up, and I don't want some woman to come along and be like, oh, what great work ethic and what great job you have, and oh, you can provide for us and a family, and you're a pretty handsome man too, so you're going to make great babies with me. Let's
all of these
carry on these problems.
Yeah, it's like that's when you enter a relationship with those are the core clauses and reasons. When those things disappear, that means the relationship disappears. When if Harley gets hurt and disfigured and has a scar across his face, for his wife to leave him because she married him because he was attractive, that's a pain I never want Harley to ever feel.
Absolutely. Yeah, or if he were to have a great job and he was married for a job and then he lost that job, and therefore lost the woman in his life because he no longer had the means to provide for her.
And we all know his crystal business is going to.
Oh, absolutely. He'll never face that problem.
No.
But it's still, you know, I want his partner to see in him the value that he brings as a soul, the way he lights up the world around him, not just because this is the business that he runs and this is the car that he drives, but this is the value I bring into your life. This is how I light up the room, and this is how you feel it, and you connect with that. And I feel like in our materialistic society, so much of that is lost. And that's why my marriage is no longer a marriage, because the way I exuded my energy was not in a way that he connected with, and his energy was not in something that I connected with. And there was just not a good energetic match there. No. But we were so focused on the material, which did work, that the real deeper, important meaning of a relationship was neglected. And I was depressed for a very long time and never understood why, because everything on paper looked good. You know, we have the jobs, we have the success, we have the health, we have the house, we have the cars, we have the land, we have the vacation once a year. We're on our way to retirement where we can grow old together and die. I'm like, why am I so depressed though? Everything on paper is right there. I marked off the checklist. Duh. And I think there's a lot of people in that position where they're like, well, I'm depressed. Well, I don't know why, because I have everything I need.
But everything you need had nothing to do with you.
Yes. Everything my human needed was there, but everything my soul needed was not. Mm-hmm. Yes. And here I am. These are the kinds of things that are nurturing my soul. I'm doing podcasts with people that provide thoughtful conversation. You know, I'm out enjoying time with friends, and my friend group right now is all, you know, positive, forward thinking, progressive in life, enjoying life, fully embracing the things that bring them value and happiness. And that's what I'm finally taking care of my soul, and I've invited people into my world that feed that element of my soul. And the material part, that's fun too. It's taking care of itself though. Yeah. But yeah, so that really started bringing awareness. That look on my coach's face, that was this big eye opener where I was like, oh my gosh, men are so disempowered. And that's what really.
Well, and then we don't get to see like the awesomeness that men can be.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh, men are awesome.
We're looking at them and valuing men for their ability to move heavy objects versus like, what about their character?
Yes.
What about their, you know, the things they love and you know, who they are as a person? Like that is so much more important than how big your 401k is.
That's so much more important. Yeah.
Also, 401ks don't matter anymore. I don't know if you've realized that, but that kind of went out of business about 30 years ago. That's not pensions. You can't rely on pensions either.
This is true.
And so it's just when we boil ourselves down to, oh well, if we check all the boxes, then we'll be safe and secure, and we actually don't go to work on ourselves.
Yeah.
And like care about how we think and how we feel, and we're just relying on, oh well, society will take care of me. It's like, why would we abdicate our lives? You're just going to say, okay, my life has nothing to do with me now. I'm just going to do what other people tell me to do.
Yes, my life has nothing to do with me now.
Like, what? That's why.
What is the point?
And that's where it's like this: the personal accountability.
Yeah. I
think is the starting point, but I think all that does is open the door to actually look at yourself, right? And just like start to fall in love with yourself.
Yeah.
Start to fall in love with your emotions. And when you create that space, then things will work themselves out.
Yeah.
Right? It's the crappiness, the anger, the what you have, what you feel is when you create the space to look at that and acknowledge it, it transforms.
I was just about to say that I think a lot of people's problems with emotions is that some of them are really hard and painful.
Yeah.
And and I think that kind of feeds that whole concept of toxic masculinity because, and this is just from my perspective looking in, I'm not
right.
in a man's body at the moment to understand, but from what I'm seeing is these emotions, say you went through some terrible loss, and those emotions are hard, and they might make me cry because they're painful, and pain can bring tears. And I'm a man, though. I can't let anybody see me cry, so stuff it down in and bottle it up, because how dare I show that I have these feelings. And on top of that, these feelings are really painful and hard, and I don't even want them. I don't want anything to do with this pain and this hardness. I'm going to just stuff it under the rug and pretend it's not even there so I can keep moving on with my life. I think women for sure battle that too, because emotions, the painful ones, grief and loss and getting the rug pulled out from under you is hard. And when life throws those curveballs at you, it's painful. And I think a lot of people, like, we're not really taught how to navigate that pain and just allow it to be. This is part of our experience here in life.
No, we're taught how to stop it and numb it as
Yes,
fast
numb
as
it.
possible.
Yes, absolutely. And then when we numb it, it doesn't make it go away.
No.
It's still there, festering, turning into a monster. And the next thing you know, you've got depression or anxiety or rage or broken relationships or just zombie people. I think that whole concept of suppressing emotions because they're too painful to confront head on is something that needs to be worked. Yeah, it is absolutely holding us back. It ties back into, like I was bringing up that conversation from earlier, feel the sadness of the end of this chapter. Because if you don't feel the sadness and the grief and you allow that to happen and you allow yourself to embrace that, you're going to bottle it up and it's going to get in your way of fully embracing and enjoying the new beginning of the next chapter.
Yeah. I think another element of this is that we can't judge other people's emotions.
No.
We have to create the environment where people don't feel judged for feeling a certain way.
Yes.
And being able to listen to them and acknowledge, like, hey, like, this is a real thing. Like, you don't have to feel like you have to hide this in order to maintain the relationship. Yeah. And that's just, that's going to bring us closer together to a whole level that we haven't even imagined yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I told the stories I wanted to tell about this topic, but yet I also feel like there's more to delve into.
I mean, it's a whole process. What we're talking about is the transformation of the human experience through one of its most powerful sides.
Yeah.
You know, emotions is why we do everything.
Yeah.
And, it's never going to be over, right? And I think that's, we'll get to a point in our society where we'll stop talking about emotions and we'll just talk about intrusive thoughts. And that's it. But but we're all maturing, and this is where we are in the story.
I like it. Yeah, so I shared kind of my story from the female perspective, but from the male perspective, it seems to me, just in the short amount of time that I've gotten to know you, that you seem to be a pretty balanced masculine. Like, there's the masculine energy there, yet you're not afraid of the fact that you have that yin-yang balance.
I have a pretty kick-ass mom. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Is that I had a dad that is extremely masculine. And when I didn't feel safe anymore, I would kind of recluse myself into my mother's grasp. Yeah. And that was a wonderful, safe place for me where I can actually see that emotions are actually valid and valuable and to be cherished. And that started kind of my whole EQ development, because I think that EQ by nature demands both sides of the equation. Otherwise, you can't just approach all things from a masculine perspective. No. That you just can't jostle the and interactions with friction into place. It doesn't work.
You can't approach, as a man, you can't approach everything from a masculine perspective, and as a woman, you can't approach everything from a feminine perspective.
Exactly.
There's got to be, I always go back to yin and yang though. Yin is that more, that softer, that love, that nurture, and yang is that more power and knowledge, and
it's an ebb and a flow.
Yeah, and you need both. And I want to word it correctly, because in our world it's like, I'm a woman that I don't identify as a woman or whatever. It's like, I think I don't want to.
We're talking about energy, right? And
it is energy, absolutely. And there is a yin and a yang in all of us. We are a polarized experience.
And I think there's polars to everything.
Absolutely.
Right? There's feminine energy wisdom that is very much about receiving and acceptance. And then there's masculine energy wisdom, which is all about pursuing the right things, right? Both of those are critically important. And
Absolutely.
It's actually, you have the acceptance that's mirrored more in an Eastern tradition, and the pursuing right things that is from a Western tradition.
Yeah.
Both of those
two
overlaid.
More poles, East and West.
Those two things overlaid on themselves is the key to freaking happiness.
Yeah.
Right? It's to eudaimonia, to enlightenment. But if we just only want to approach things in one way, we don't get that far.
We don't have the balance.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's the darkness needs the light, and the light needs the darkness to be what it is. And the same with everything in life. You need to balance that polarity. You need the yin and the yang. Yeah. So what do we do? What do we do next? How do we change the world?
The only thing we can do is be, right? People will know who we are and what we're about by our love, and you can't convince someone to love themselves, right?
This is true. They have to figure that out themselves.
Yeah, so I think all we do is we mirror love in our interactions, and we show them what it looks like to love ourselves and to not be weighted down by those cultural standards, and just be ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think then that gives them all the ammunition they need to take that step when they're ready for it. And again, it's about, this is why I love the Christian metaphor of it's about planting mustard seeds, not about growing the plant yourself. All you can do is live the way you live. This is more Buddhist, and just be. And if they want to take up that kind of way of being, that's their whole journey, right?
Yeah.
I can't self-impose, this is my virtue hermeneutic and structure and worldview. That doesn't help anybody.
It doesn't.
And that would be approaching things way too toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's the thing. It's like, I don't ever tell people what to do, ever.
Yeah.
It's, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, does this make sense for you?
Yeah.
Right? And then if yes, this is exactly what I need to be doing. Great, cool. You take care of this. I'm going to take care of this thing, and then we're going to meet in the middle. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, that ability to be open to collaboration is so important, and the word ego just popped into my mind too as you were telling that story, or as you were talking. Yeah, that ego gets in the way, because I'm analyzing okay, what are all these elements of toxic masculinity that need to, or just even emotional toxicity.
It's an ego that's too scared to change and grow.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just because because culture created an environment where you had to have the answer.
Yes.
And that's
especially
why.
Men have to have the answer.
Yes. Nobody ever
things.
has the answer. If the wisest people in our society, literally their epitome of wisdom is the only thing I know. The only thing I know is that I know nothing. Then you, sir, the bar is even lower for you, right? We don't have to do anything, right? We just have to live our lives to where does your heart lead you to go? That's it. There isn't.
Did you have to be able to be in touch with your heart to even know how to let it lead you?
But that starts with abdication of the ego, and just we're gonna stop letting that dictate the insecurity to not be anything other than ourselves. That's and I'm mixing up my words, right? But
insecurity is the ego stepping in too much.
Exactly.
It's the ego that is trying to protect us. It's the ego that wants acceptance. It's the ego that wants things to be a certain way that they are. It's the ego that tries to control the environment that you're in, because the ego wants to keep the environment the way the ego thinks it needs to be. And releasing that ego to just let things be is what's going to help dispel those insecurities. because those insecurities are coming from like, oh, people are judging me, or I'm doing the wrong thing, or I'm not good enough, or whatever negative self-talk you throw at yourself all the time, because the ego is constantly in the way telling you this. Yeah, letting the ego just kind of take a back seat. Look, ego, your only job is to tell me to eat when I'm hungry, and to tell me to go to bed when I'm tired, and to tell me to run away when there's an angry bear. Other than that, step forward. Who cares what other people think of you? That's their journey. That's their business.
Yeah.
Your journey is to do you.
Their perceptions of you is not you.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, the way they think of you does not define you. And yeah, that goes back to nothing really defines you but you and the good that you're doing for the world around you.
Yeah.
You're not your job, you're not your wife, you're not your husband, you're not your kids.
The fruit of your behavior. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Just focus on that. What are you doing, man? Sit. What are you doing? What are you doing, woman?
Moving mountains, man. What are you doing?
You know, moving mountains, because that's all that matters. We don't, fitting into a box to fit someone else's perception. I almost feel like that's the whole crux, right? It's just, why are we denying ourselves to fit a false perception?
Yeah. We're just slipping back in. I love how this is tying in with the speech I gave. We're slipping back into the ruts that society has carved before us. And you're not going to get anywhere if you keep following those ruts. You're just going to get to wherever the ruts lead you, which is where everybody else in society is that follow the ruts.
And that doesn't mean like what society wants is wrong.
Right.
Or is bad to pursue.
Yeah.
But it's, if you were pursuing it because society told you to pursue it, now that's wrong.
Yeah. You're completely out of touch with yourself.
It's only worth to be pursued if that is what, oh my gosh, I want that.
Yeah.
That is what I want.
Yeah,
okay,
like you can genuinely look at it and say, yes, I want the husband and the 2.5 kids and the dog and the car and the house with the white picket fence and the one vacation a year.
And the world is really big. There's enough room for a wife that loves having a very masculine husband, and she fits a very traditional feminine role. There are women out there that love that, and they live for that.
But know that you love that because it feeds you and your soul, not because this is what you've witnessed for generations.
Has to be that. No, it's like business. It's like you find the customer. You don't force someone to buy from you that wouldn't get value from what you do.
Yes.
No, it's like, hey, if you're a super masculine dude and you really need a super feminine female, great. Look for someone, a feminine female, that needs a very masculine male. Great. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Now we're not imposing on each other.
Right.
We all get to be things, and let's let the more feminine dudes date the more masculine women, and the more there doesn't need to be a pattern that we're trying to emulate.
No.
Right? And it's just like, we just need to get into that dialogue with ourselves. Hey, what do I need? What do I like? Not because it's right and wrong for society, but because it's right and wrong for me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, if you want to play with dolls and wear pink, it doesn't make you any less of a person. It doesn't.
And for those that really need someone to say this, it doesn't make you less of a man either.
Yes.
I wore pink the other day. It's actually a nice lavender, and my balls are still attached. So, look at that. Surprise.
Oh, gosh.
So
I don't understand why people freak out over that kind of stuff, but if I were to wear work boots and overalls, it's okay.
In the 50s, pink was the guy color. Blue was the girl color. It's all arbitrary.
I think I knew that at one point, I forgot about that. Like,
it's all arbitrary.
It's so dumb that a color would even have a gender.
It's a wavelength of light.
Yeah.
Does light have a gender now?
Can we stop?
Can we stop throwing penises and vaginas on everything? No, it doesn't belong there.
It sounds a little violating anyway. Let's not throw them on things.
Yeah,
keep that off the table. Oh my gosh. Oh. Well, we've definitely checked the not for children box on this podcast.
Oh my gosh, yeah, this is going to be a touch explicit, but that's okay.
Just a little. People like explicit though.
That's,
yeah.
I'm from New Jersey. I have no problem.
I'm from here. I've never gotten out of here. Sometimes it feels like I'm never leaving here. But hey, here needs me. And that's why I'm here. And here needs you. Thank you for being here.
Jami, thank you. Because you know what? It's just, a lot of the times, especially when you're a sensitive guy, it's you think that you're the odd man out. And you are, for some reason.
You are a very odd man out here in our little society that we've built here, but it's so refreshing.
And it's, and that's just, we just gotta kind of have peace for like, hey, we're gonna end up where we need to end up, and that's gonna be different than what that place was, but that is because the place is different because you're there now.
Yeah.
And, that's fine.
It's
right?
okay.
Change is okay.
Yeah, right. Quit worrying about what other people think you need to be. If you're a sensitive guy, that's you, and that's
a good
awesome.
Thing. That is a good
yes.
thing. And it's just like, hey, and if you're a really quiet, stoic dude, that's awesome too.
As long as it's you.
But don't be that because you feel like you have to be
that. Because somebody else made you believe that you have to be.
Listen,
just like I lived a life thinking that I was supposed to stay in a marriage because I have children with this man and that's what you're supposed to do. I have financial assets with this man and that's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to do anything but follow your own heart and do what's right for you. And everyone's gonna think you're crazy for it because you know what? When you do something that goes against the grain, it's gonna make everyone else around you uncomfortable because it's gonna shine a light on the fact that...
It's actually, it has nothing to do with you.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
The fact that they get uncomfortable about your actions
is a reflection of their own inability to change in the areas in their life that is calling. Why is that painful for them? Why is that? Oh, my neighbor changed and grew. I'm angry now. I'm hurt. I'm going to say something. Oh, you don't look like the kind of guy to do that.
Yeah,
it's like,
what?
Man, so that just told me that this person struggles with fitting in a box themselves, and they've made choices based on fitting in that box. And that's why that when you change and don't give a crap about the box, you hurt their value structure of their own personal identity that is crafted based on externals. That's the only reason why they're upset.
Yeah.
That is the only reason. It has nothing to do with you, but rather the fact that because you're living your own life, they are now insecure by the fact that they're not living theirs.
Yeah, and they probably don't even realize it, which is why they're getting mad at you.
And
posting mean things about you on Facebook.
Exactly. So they I would probably say, like, they most definitely, very good chance, not.
Yeah.
And it's just because that's where we've gotten ourselves. So we're just like, we would rather look at what's going wrong with the other person than, hey, why is this stirring up these feelings in me?
Yes. And that comes full circle back to what we were saying earlier about just be in touch with your emotions and know your emotions. Yeah. So when you do get uncomfortable, you can know why. You can go within and address it.
And you can embrace it.
Yes, absolutely.
Get ready for the level up. If you stop running away from everything that, makes your heart go pitter patter, you're gonna be a stronger dude for it.
Yes.
Lordy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And also, by the way, women find that extremely attractive.
They do.
So, tip.
Yes, I can vouch for that.
Emotional stability, attractive. Wait,
who knew?
So you can go to bed next to someone for like 50 years and not be in fear that they're going to flip out one day because they bottled up their emotions till kingdom come?
That sounds really nice.
Yeah, man, maybe it's just like women line up for safe, stable relationships like that. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm just going to like, guys, you got the playbook, okay? This is coming from a single guy that does nothing but work, but it's that obvious. It's that obvious. It's
pretty obvious, honestly. I mean, they say women are hard to read, but I think we're only hard to read for the men who don't know how to read us because we have emotions and the men have bottled them up. We'd be way easier to understand.
If emotions were your friend, you would be able to recognize your friend in other people.
Yay! So this is why we record our conversations, because I, as your scribe, don't always have scribe materials at hand.
I'm not always hitting the podcast with this much fire, so this was really good. It's going to get chopped up a lot. So, good stuff.
Such good stuff.
Do we got anything else to flush out here? Because otherwise,
I don't think so. Hopefully, these fun little microphones recorded everything.
especially like how that Henry has like
Is
laid
laying
across.
on our cord.
Yeah, I hope that's not making your life terrible.
I hope you heard everything we said. If not, I hope you're a really good lip reader.
So goodbye and thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you got something out of this. I would love, if you did get something out of this, to leave some comments.
Yeah.
Our links to social media are at the bottom.
In the show notes.
Yep. Please hit the subscribe button. Show us some love. I'm on YouTube. Are you on YouTube?
Yeah, Triangle Company TV, Jami Christine over here.
Yes.
And again, because we're human beings at the start of our entrepreneurial journeys, or at least midway, we are not unapproachable. We actually really, really enjoy furthering these discussions with our audience.
Yes, absolutely.
So if this hit a chord with you, that could be a big signal to be like, hey Rob, hey Jami, like get me more connected with like how you guys think, because
I like it.
we like thinking with other people that like thinking along with us.
It's nice to do that. Yes, that was really eloquently put.
Yeah, I'm a professional copywriter.
You are.
Can you not tell?
Good with words.
Yeah. Well,
This is why I pay you the big bucks.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And with that, I'm gonna go hang out with Henry all day.
All right.
So
I'm gonna go train for a half marathon.
Oh my gosh, I still can't believe you're doing that.
I can't believe it's like 3 months away and I can barely get 5 miles out of me.
And soon you'll be walking out the door. All right. Take care. Goodbye.